Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sarah's Factory, where efficiency meets imagination. Today, we're building up my American suburban shopping district, complete with coffee shops, burger joints, and even a tire shop for when your tractor is having a rough day. What else could this quaint suburban town need, other than, of course, a place to wash those hard-working tractors after a long day? This build will take your tractors from filthy to fix-it factory fresh, with integrated particle accelerators for that laser-precise clean. This factory will be housing my dark matter crystal production. It's functional, fun, and just a little ridiculous. Let's get started. I went ahead and I laid out the pavement foundations for my tractors to pass through, as well as some road markers for easy navigation. The plan is to make the particle accelerator look like they are washing the tractors as they drive through the washing bays. So let's go ahead and place down the basic frame and layout to get this build started. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull out those particle accelerators. I want to see if I can fit 2 of these into this build. Making sure that we get the placement of this right, because we have to fit a lot into a very small space. And so now we have everything put in, we are going to have to decide which one is going to be loading and which one is going to be unloading. It doesn't matter a whole lot because they're both going to be entering and exiting through the same way. But we are going to go ahead and route in the loading, which is going to load our dark matter crystals, and this is going to be the unloading, which is going to unload our diamonds. So the diamonds are going to come down and through and into our particle accelerators, where those particle accelerators are then going to load our dark matter crystals into here. There is a part of this build which I am going to hide, and that is going to be a part of my underbelly system, which is actually hidden right underneath everything here. So this is where I have my train stations that are going to be delivering that dark matter residue. I haven't made it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and just put one in really quick. So now that we've gone ahead and put in that train station, as well as connecting in the actual mechanical parts, we get to do the fun part. Now we get to decorate. So we're gonna go ahead and come up, we're gonna seal this off, and we're gonna get decorating. So first thing that we're gonna do when we start to think about decorating is we're gonna make sure that we have that reference photo to work off of. This is gonna be really important because using these reference photos are really gonna allow us to find those realistic, real world details to work off of. Of course, we are also gonna have to figure out where we wanna put the roof on this thing. So we are gonna go ahead and put in the walls and the roof to get a basic idea of what we wanna do with this build. So now that we have the basic frame shape of this build put together, I am going to go ahead and add in the extra little bit of pizzazz. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give the roof of this build a little bit of extra shape, of course using those beams to give it that rounded kind of texture and really make this build pop. I'm really loving how this build is turning out. I'm going to go ahead and take this curved roof texture and I'm going to apply it to the opposite side here. From here, I'm going to go ahead and fill in the roof and decide what kind of actual texture I want to use. I think I'm going to play around with some signs as well as some beams to see what works best. Let's see what I decide on. And so I think I'm really liking the way that the billboards are looking with the painted beams. I did go ahead and give the billboards a very just ever so slightly blue color to them to give them just a little bit of an offset compared to that pure white painted beam. A little bit of a pain, but I think very well worth it. We are going to go ahead and do this exact same thing onto the opposite side here really quick to finish up this roof. I'm also going to make sure that the top of this is looking nice and finished. So now that we have the roof all finished, I do think I want to go ahead and add a little bit of extra color. Again, using those reference photos to give me a little bit of inspiration, I'm going to go with a nice blue color to make this all kind of tie in. All right, and I think it's really starting to look like a car wash at this point. So here I am going to go ahead and add in some windows to really showcase that car wash bay. Using pillars, I'll be adding in some color and texture as well, making sure that I make that roof and pillar connection look smooth and it's not clipping in through the actual roof itself. So now that we have decided on a color and texture scheme, we're going to go ahead and apply this to the rest of the build, also adding in a couple of more awnings just to give this build even more depth, kind of making it look like it would actually repel some rain off of its roof. I really am loving how this build is turning out. So what we're going to do next is we're going to head and work on the entrance for this build and also finish the other side. I'm also going to add in a couple of cute little downspouts just to really hone in that this roof could be an actual roof effect. Our build is starting to look like a real finished building. Of course, though, I'm not going to stop here. We're going to be adding in a lot more detail, adding in color, signs, and then maybe just some road markers, that kind of a thing. I'm going to start with the exit of this building and see where my imagination takes me. I'm going to be placing in one more awning to give this a little bit more depth. Also placing in some signs, making sure to match them into that stone color I've chosen. Using some billboards and beams, adding in a fake door, and then also placing a billboard as a placeholder for a later blueprint that I'll be making with a lot more detail. Now that the exit of this build is starting to really take shape, we're going to add in some extra details onto the entrance, making a pay station, and also making sure that these tractors will be very easily able to get into these bays, drive through, and then be on their way. Now we're going to have some fun making some blueprints. The first blueprint that we're going to be making for this build is going to be the sign and logo. What I usually do is I'm just going to place down some basic walls, and then we're going to get really crafty with the sign work itself. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with this idea of using some different sized signs to try to get the actual name of this written out. Okay, I like it. Now let's put display signs here. Using these, let's make it just line up at the bottom. The interesting thing about this sign is that it actually has a checkered flag that's a part of it. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to accomplish it and make it exactly match up to the original. However, we're going to see if we can give it a little bit of a nod. Don't hate it. I might mess with it just a little bit more though. I am going to see if I can make this almost kind of look rounded though. That is definitely going to be a challenge. So let's just see what I can kind of come up with here. I think I might actually pivot, and instead of making it a round sign, we're actually just going to use a small billboard instead. We're going to make it sit exactly right behind the other signs, so that way they don't try to clip through each other. So the trick that we're going to be using is we're going to pull out a pillar, and it doesn't matter what kind. From here, you're just going to place it onto your existing wall, and now you can place your wall anywhere you want it to go. So let's go ahead and place it on the back side, and then we're gonna make this come in just ever so slightly. So from here, we're just getting it to clip on, but we're gonna make it almost barely noticeable of a difference. That should allow now our billboards to sit just right behind the signs that we already have up. And since we already have this here, I am going to try to see if I can make one more layer, making it again just very, very, very ever so slightly off of where that wall wants to clip onto. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to see if I can add a border into where this checkered flag is. Okay, I like it. The only thing is that this is a little bit too close to the top, so I am just going to redo the placement of these small billboards really quick. That is looking a lot more balanced. So now we get to add in just that little bit of extra red detail. The red detail on the actual logo does have that curve to it, so we might have to modify it or get really intricate with the angle of the signs. And then I'm going to be using a technique that I like to use for making these intricate signs. By using a full frame window, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be rotating and transferring these signs onto the layer that we want it to be on, but now we get to have more control with the actual angle itself. So let's see if we can't get creative with it using the snapping points that we already have set. what I'm trying to accomplish, I think this should work. Knowing me, I'm probably going to end up redoing it, but I'm pretty happy with it for how it is now, and I'll probably end up kind of thinking on it later. Okay, so I went ahead and I tested it out on the build, and my only grief is that it has like this little piece of white sticking out underneath it. So I'm actually going to see what it looks like if we just get rid of the white entirely, and then we'll try it out again. I think not bad, but I'm going to go ahead and load up the original car wash sign, and I want to see if we can keep the white, so I'm going to try to play around with making almost that rounded style. Okay, and then what I've done is I've just gotten rid of that little piece of white that was sticking out at the bottom. So let's say that this is going to be our car wash sign B. Okay, and I think we have a winner. So for now, this is what we're going to stick with. We'll see if I end up reworking it later, but just to get kind of more of the idea of seeing it with some color on it, we're going to go ahead and apply this to the other spots of the build as well. Nice, and I just want to make sure that this is looking balanced, so as I'm going, I'm being really nitpicky with where I'm placing it, just to make sure that it actually looks like this is where a sign would go on a real building, and I'm not just placing it down just because that's where it wants to snap onto. Now that the exterior of the build is 90% finished, we're going to go ahead and start working on the interior decorating. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some billboards and use those as lighting so we can light up this whole area and actually see what we're doing. And so, of course, we're going to be utilizing blueprints to get these ceiling lights to look good and be uniform. So we're going to play around with the idea of adding in some hanging ceiling lights. I think I'm going to go ahead and make them 8 meters long, giving myself enough room at the bottom here to work with so I can get underneath it. We're going to add in some signs. We're then going to make these signs nice and vibrant, so we're going to change the layout here. And then we're going to set that background color to a nice vibrant blue. Turn that emission strength on to 3. We're going to copy it and paste it. From here, we're going to add in a couple more signs, placing them off by 1/2 meter. We're going to get rid of this beam. And then we're going to be utilizing a straight walkway here. We're just going to find the middle point, bring it up. And that's going to give us that nice graded texture on the light itself. We're not going to stop here though. We're going to keep adding in a couple more details. Taking a metal beam, I'm going to just clip it in onto the side here. I'm going to rotate it. And then I'm going to just set it in by 1/2 meter and then also up by 1/2 meter. We're going to do the same thing on the other side as well. And then I want this to look nice and even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a metal beam. I'm going to pull it through 4 meters. Lay it flat, and then I'm going to bump it in by 1/2 meter. That's going to make that connection point nice and smooth. We're going to do the same thing on this side. Perfect. I'm actually going to take this and I'm going to bump it in just 1. So again, we're rotating. We're going to push it in 1/2 meter and then also bump it over 1/2 meter. Nice. So these are going to be hanging, so next thing that we're going to do, we're just going to add in a beam support onto the inside. And then from there, we can add in whatever height braided cables we want. For now, I'm just going to put a little 1 meter, because each ceiling that I'm going to put this on is going to be a slightly different height. Looking good. Let's go ahead and save it. So now that we have some lighting to work with on the inside, we're going to be creating the entranceways for the bays. Of course, utilizing signs and beams, we're going to make an archway in a blueprint designer so that way you can have each side match. I will be using the same technique that I used making the cobblestone logo sign, ever so slightly offsetting the signs using a horizontal pillar with the wall ever so slightly attached away from its snapping point. Using blueprints within blueprints, I have pretty easily created these scrubbers just using a beam with a couple of diagonal beams as attachment points with these 3-meter label signs then attached to those. I then took those and I just stacked one right on top of the other and slightly rotating each one from there. I went ahead and also added in the top rail with a couple of extra little cables attached just for fun. Now that we've finished up these blueprints, I'm going to add in a couple more blueprints with archways for fans and of course hot lava wax. With all of the interior blueprint decorations finished, we're going to make some cosmetic changes to the interior just to brighten it up a little bit and also make sure that we have enough room for those blueprints to sit in nicely. Now that all the blueprints are in, all we have to do is polish up this build and make it so it is as clean as these tractors are going to be after they go through this amazing car wash. Thank you guys so much for coming and joining me today in this build. I can't wait to make more of these, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Thanks for coming, and have fun building.